Welcome back to... Are you okay?
I'm okay. Welcome back to Pro-Life Without
Welcome back
Borders.
to Pro-Life Without Borders.
We're having a technical difficulty today.
We are a technical difficulty. Remember how we explained to you guys that we have equipment, but now we are limited only by our competence?
Yeah.
Our competence has not greatly increased or increased at all in the last several weeks. So this is as good as it's going to get.
Well, my computer is clearly having a problem, so we're using your computer, and so like the lighting is different, the camera is different.
But the mics are the same.
The mics are the same, and I think that's probably the big thing.
Yeah, I don't know how... I mean, I know people watch us on YouTube, but I feel like more people listen to us on the podcast platforms. So
yeah,
they don't want to see our faces anyway. Emily watches us on YouTube.
Yeah. So it's been a banner day around here.
It has been a banner day. So the white smoke a seagull's nesting, or at least sitting, was disrupted.
It just flew away.
A new pope. We have a new pope. And by we, I mean the world, because neither Mikayla nor I are Catholic, but we have been watching the proceedings with extreme excitement.
Yeah. It's been such a great 2 weeks for me. I'm so nosy.
I'm actually kind of mad that it was so fast. Like, I was enjoying kind of like the anticipation.
Like the mystery of it all was just so fascinating.
And like
to
the
me.
Cardinals coming in and out and like doing their thing. Yeah.
Just staring at a chimney for hours, being like, what color is the smoke?
Yeah. I mean, not that I was staring at the chimney, but.
Oh, I was.
Like, it would have been, I feel like it could have been fun if it had lasted just a couple more days.
Yeah. So I actually was reading about like the average length of conclaves. So the longest conclave was 7 years.
That's
so they
wild.
just like
what
at that point,
or years,
like way back, like 1361.
Like they were not having it. Like they
were. Well, like what happened? Like people would have aged out. Cardinals would have aged out.
Cardinals would have died.
They would have died. Like it would have been what? Like how was the Catholic Church functioning with no pope during that time?
For 7 years.
All the Cardinals are like busy
every day.
I need to read more about it, but it was like 1360 or something like that. Not a good time.
No, is that the?
That was
okay.
The
So
longest
conclave. There was 1 year, and it was in the 1300s. That was like the last year that they picked a non-cardinal. I wonder if it was the same. I wonder if they just gave up.
Maybe they were like, "This isn't working for us."
Literally anyone.
Let's try something different. And then the shortest, because then there were speculations that this was the shortest conclave because I believe they voted on the fourth vote.
Right. Well, because there have to be 2 votes. I read that.
Oh, so you can't just do it on the first vote?
No, so if they vote and everyone...
What's the point of having the first vote?
Well, they have to have 2 votes where the same person is selected.
Oh.
So they vote, and then if it's all one person, they all vote again.
Just and are you sure about this?
I guess. And so then there's like a second vote, and that's when... So it can never be the first vote of the day. Okay, because it has to be the same person.
It turns out that this was not the shortest conclave, though it's up there. And that, on average... Since like 1871 or something like that, most conclaves have not been any longer than 3 days.
Which makes sense because with modern communication methods, I mean, you figure back in the day, like how long would it even take to tell all the cardinals that like they need to come in for conclave? And then you figure how many of them would be really like out of date as a like what's going on and what's happening at the Vatican, because we would have to rely on letters, whereas now you can just like chat with each other. And
so everyone probably goes in knowing who they're interested in. Yeah.
They're not going to be like, whoa, where's that guy? Oh, he died 3 years ago. Yeah. You know, kind of thing, which I'm sure was happening back in like the 14, 15, 16, even 1700s.
Yeah. So it's been super interesting as a non-Catholic observer.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, because I was definitely not watching. It was a crazy time in my life when Pope Francis was elected, although I was aware that he was being elected.
I was a minor.
Yeah.
So I quite frankly did not care about the conclave.
You probably had no idea. The ability for live streaming, I feel like, has really like that made it really real, because like you could literally like everyone could see the white smoke come out at the same time.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too, because the cardinals are all sequestered, so they're supposed to have no contact with the outside world. That's probably way harder to do now than it was back then. So I read that they actually jammed the cell towers of the Vatican.
Can you imagine if you're like
which would explain why the live stream that I was watching was of somewhat questionable quality.
Trying to overcome those jammers.
Well, it was like mega zoomed in. And obviously the Vatican is not some massive place.
Right. It's pretty
Like
small.
it's small, but
Can you
like
imagine if you're like too old to vote, but you have to go to this meeting and you just want to play Candy Crush and they jam your signal? I
so
mean, I'm
lame.
not saying that would happen, but I feel like if I was a cardinal, that would happen. Maybe that's why I'm not.
I feel like I love church polity enough that I might be entertained enough without Candy
You would
Crush.
100% be entertained enough.
Yeah, like
If there
I'm like
were,
not even Catholic. I literally have, quite frankly, zero buy-in as far as who is the Pope. I suppose some, because I do believe that they have political power,
oh, for
despite
sure,
being
yeah,
that of the church. Like it's super fascinating. But like I'm Reformed Presbyterian.
yeah,
We parted ways with the Pope a long time ago. But I'm just, man, it was fascinating.
it
And
is
I'm
really
kind of sad it's
interesting.
over. Like, what am I going to do now?
We're to find a new church polity to.
I know. Well, it's almost
Creep on.
synod season anyway, so I've got like things to keep up with.
That's true. You've got all the synods to watch.
And the general assemblies, yeah. My little group chat.
I am not even 100% sure that my church has. I don't even know. We have a bishop. His name is Todd.
Okay.
I don't know anything else about our church leadership. Like Mark is a cluster, so our church has clusters. So Mark is a cluster leader.
I was like, okay,
That's
like
terrible.
we can air dirty laundry on here.
So like there's clusters, like these clusters are like geographic. So there's like several churches
Sure.
that are all like clustered together.
Yeah,
And
like
then
a
there's
presbytery.
kind of, and then there's a pastor, he's not really over top of them, but he's kind of like, I guess, supervising or leading or whatever. And Mark is a cluster leader.
Okay.
And then we have like our bishop, and then we have a board. I don't know. I mean, things happen.
Ours is pretty. This is why I love being Presbyterian. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll make committees for stuff. Like
You do like a
like
good
the actual procedures are not necessarily super straightforward. But like, my church has a session. Like our ruling and teaching elders make up the session. Those members of the session are also members of the presbytery, which is like a geographical map. Our presbytery kind of doesn't make any sense, but like that's a whole different story. I'm in the largest presbytery in my denomination, so it expands quite far down and like weirdly far over. And also, I think we're like loosely affiliated with people in Japan. It's a whole thing. And then
smart.
all of the presbyteries together make up synod.
Okay.
And so synod is like the highest church court, and it meets once a year. I think presbyteries meet quarterly. Our session meets every other month, but synod meets annually.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we have that much structure, but I am certainly not aware.
Yeah,
just living my best life.
I'm so nosy. Like my quest for knowledge is.
Well, if we have a general assembly and if it is videotaped, I will send you the link.
Send me the live stream, because I'll put, and they all happen like in the summertime. I don't know why that was just like like every denomination ever was like, let's have our.
That sounds terrible. What if you're trying to go on vacation? Well, I guess if you're most people are only going to one.
Yeah, like no one else is sitting around watching all of them, but like sometimes they happen the same week. So like our synod will happen the same time as like the Orthodox Presbyterian synod, and then
so you're going to be that person that like everyone's like, no one will see this, and then they all get an email from you being like, why did this happen?
I read the minutes of synod every year. It's like 800 pages. I read them.
No wonder you don't have time to read for fun. You're busy reading synod minutes.
It is fun. Like I want to know. I want to know what's
fun.
up.
I mean, you could know, but that doesn't make it fun.
No, some of it's actually not fun at all. Like synod, you don't want a case to have to go to synod. Things have not gone well for you if synod is hearing your case. But they're like necessary things that the church has to address.
Oh yeah,
you know? Like
I just wouldn't read all 800 pages of it.
I want to know.
I know you do.
Actually, before we get into it, and then we'll go, because now I feel bad for like dragging it down with like church discipline cases. I've just finished reading the 2024 minutes of synod. It took me this long. So
believe it.
I have 1 month until the 2025 synod starts. And there was like this little. We're such meticulous note takers. Someone gave their pastor, who maybe served as some sort of clerk of presbytery or something, a Tootsie Roll bouquet, and it made it into the minutes of synod. And so I'm reading like this really heavy stuff, like really heavy things, and then it's like, and so gave so and so a Tootsie Roll bouquet. And there was a round of applause.
That's going to be in history.
It is.
Someone later is going to be like, and we believe this is what a Tootsie Roll may have looked like. And it's going to be wrong.
I hope that man enjoyed his Tootsie Rolls.
Although, let's be real, Tootsie Rolls will 100% survive the test of time, and they won't change. You could pick them up and eat them.
Oh, yeah.
Probably
for
300
sure.
years from now.
So, speaking of polity.
Okay, so something just hit the pro-life world, and it's been making quite the splash.
Yeah.
It is a study creatively called The Abortion Pill Harms Women, and it was put out by the Ethics and Public Policy Center. And Mikayla, our resident research expert, is going to tell us, Mikayla, is this a good study? Because one of the things you have to ask yourself is who did the study, why did they do it, and where did they get their material? Because everyone has a slant, even if they don't want to.
Yeah.
And in the abortion world, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, there is no middle ground. Like there truly is not a neutral organization, or probably even very many neutral people. There's uninformed people, but if you're informed, you basically have an opinion.
Yeah.
And organizations certainly have opinions. So the Ethics and Public Policy Center is what I would call a pro-life organization. But that doesn't mean that the study is bad. And Mikayla is going to explain why.
Yeah. So essentially what they did was they took information from health insurance claims from 2017 to 2023. And these were prescriptions for mifepristone abortions. So these are legal abortions. They're happening in what some people would say the ideal circumstances.
Right.
This woman's visited a medical professional, has received a legitimate prescription by a medical provider for legitimate pills that she is getting.
The pills are from a trusted source. They're not expired.
Yeah.
Like all of the things we've talked about being problems with the abortion pill, being in the second trimester, being in the third trimester, getting pills from a weird source, not seeing a doctor, not knowing how far along you are. None of those issues are in this study or in the women who were studied. All of these women would have had their abortions, gotten their abortion pills in a controlled and the way it's intended to be.
Right.
So while we would never say that we want women to have an abortion, this is like the way the pills were intended to be used.
Right. And so they reviewed 865,727 abortions.
That's so many.
That's so many.
And like each of those was one or a baby. Or
yeah,
like
at least one.
Babies.
Yeah. So just
it's really
the sheer,
actually kind of heartbreaking.
The sheer size, the fact that there's that much information and what quite frankly is not that much time. Yeah. 6 years. So it's just an insane amount of data that they were working off of. And they did receive all of this data through a database that is very commonly used for research projects. So I don't know that they give the name, but it's something that's widely used in academic and regulatory research.
Okay, so they're not using like prolifebobjones.com.
No.
Yeah.
No. They're using a very standard research database. And so they conclude, they're looking at all of these different things, and we'll kind of break apart the study, but the big headline is that they concluded that mifepristone has serious adverse events that are 22 times as high as what the clinical trials that the FDA says they did reported.
Right.
So the FDA says that when they did these clinical trials before mifepristone hit the market, that less than 0.5% of women experience a serious adverse effect,
which is a very low number.
Yeah, right.
And that's the battle we've been fighting, in that we know anecdotally it is much higher than 0.5%. But everyone goes back to these FDA clinical trials, right, saying, "Oh no, here's the study showing that it's only 0.5%. So these adverse effects that you're seeing are like because of something else, or because it wasn't done right, or whatever."
And the study shows that 10.93. So essentially 11% of women who use mifepristone as prescribed and directed
under the supervision
of a doctor with legitimate pills during the first 11 weeks of pregnancy will experience serious adverse effects.
Which is insane. Nobody, unless you're facing a life-threatening condition, is going to go for a procedure that has an 11% chance of an adverse effect.
No.
You're not. Like, I had knee surgery, okay, and I needed it. Like, I couldn't walk. I had to have a brace. I couldn't drive. Like, it was if they had said to me, you have an 11% chance of having an adverse effect, and we'll talk about what those adverse effects are in a minute, I'm not sure I would have done it. Yeah. Like, that's a high number.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking, if there are 10 women in a room and all of them have had a pill abortion, one of them is going to have had a serious effect.
Yeah. So this is, to knowledge, the largest study that's been done. And just to give kind of an understanding of the scale of this study, when the FDA first ran their clinical trials, which would have been, I think, the late 90s, because mifepristone hit the market, 2001, something like that. There were basically 31,000 participants in the initial clinical trials. So when they came up with this only less than 0.5% number, it was based off of 31,000 participants. This had 866,000 participants. So it's a massive,
huge, absolutely huge,
like massive. So they had 28 times more participants in this study than in the original clinical trials.
So let's talk about adverse events.
Yes.
What do they consider to be an adverse event? And then we're going to talk about what they don't consider to be an adverse event. I printed that off too.
Okay.
The adverse events excluded.
Okay.
Because I think some of them are worth looking at.
So they did include this. This is a really well put together study. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, as someone who reads a ton of papers, I eat, live, and breathe the at-home abortion issue. And also to see like a good academic study put together, like, this is just my best day, even though it's so depressing. But they do have some information about these serious adverse events. And so I'll just read the list, because these are in fact serious. This is not, oh, I cramped for 3 days and it hurt. Sepsis.
Infection.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Well, they have sepsis and infection as two separate things.
My bad. So sepsis is worse.
Yeah, so sepsis is worse. And then you've got infection.
Sorry, I'm very passionate about sepsis, which is a weird thing to say. So when they delivered the twins, I was becoming septic.
Right.
I had not yet become septic, and they were like, "Your life is in the balance."
Yeah, sepsis is essentially infection that goes uncontrolled
and into your bloodstream.
Yeah, and into your bloodstream.
So they were like when they were like, "You're going septic, you're going into the C-section now." It was it was like people running down the hall. Like,
there's no casual form of sepsis.
No, and I had not even become septic yet.
Yeah.
And I actually did not become septic because they intervened. Right. But sepsis is a really big deal.
Yes. So sepsis, infection, transfusion.
Right. So blood loss.
Right. Which is followed by hemorrhaging. So you've got hemorrhaging, which is like uncontrolled blood loss that leads to transfusion.
Yep.
Hospitalization related to the abortion. ER visits related to the abortion.
Which is very high.
Yes. Ectopic pregnancy. And then they've got other life-threatening adverse events, which include things like cardiac, pulmonary thrombosis, anaphylaxis, surgery.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot is that if you're taking these pills and you get them from online, you don't know if you're allergic. And people always blow that off. Like, oh, who could be allergic to this? The reality is people can be allergic to anything. I knew somebody who was allergic to grass.
Yeah.
And so anaphylaxis is an allergic response.
And people are allergic to I'm allergic to penicillin. That's like the most common antibiotic. It's actually incredibly unfortunate.
It's a bummer.
It's a real bummer. It's fine, but like, it's medication allergic reactions are real.
Yeah.
So you've got all of those, and then you have repeated surgical abortions, which is, hey, you tried this chemical abortion and now we have to go in and correct it surgically because it didn't work, right? Like, there's something went wrong. And then they just kind of have like this general other abortion specific complications.
So, and then it says at the bottom, the overall serious adverse event rate of 10.93%, essentially 11%, is adjusted for the fact that some women suffer from adverse events in multiple categories. So it's not like you get one, like you could get 3.
Right. And what the study is saying is that it's not like we're counting one woman's multiple adverse events as multiple things. So like, it's bad.
It's bad.
It's bad.
In fact, if this study was interested in inflating the numbers, they could have.
Yes.
And they aren't. Like, they're being very straightforward.
Yeah, I was like, they're very straightforward. Like, it doesn't include this. Like, data sets are very tricky. That's my least favorite part of doing research, are the data sets. And I'm like, you know what? This is not fun anymore.
So sorry, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we talk about excluded events?
No. So those are, whenever they're saying, hey, 11% of women have serious adverse events, that is what they're talking about.
Right. And they're not counting women twice. So if a woman had 2 adverse events, they're not counting her twice. She's still only counted once.
Yes. And I just thought it was interesting, like and they have like the percentage rate of some of these. And so something like, I think sepsis is the least likely, although they recorded 824. That's that's 824 women that
Those
were
are
not having a good
individuals.
day.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, we have to remember, 10.1%, that's not that much. That's 824 women.
We're talking about abortions in the hundreds of
Yeah, these
thousands.
are a lot of women.
These
This
are
is
a
a big
lot of
number.
lives. Yeah, so that's a huge amount. So that would be like the least likely serious adverse event. The most likely would be kind of that other general category of like other abortion specific complications, followed very closely by ER visits, and hemorrhaging. So I would say that hemorrhaging out of all of these would be like the biggest.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is reflected with what we see on the chat line. And a lot of women won't go in for hemorrhaging. They'll just bleed and hope they survive. I mean, for lack of better, because you just, well, I'll either make it or I won't.
Well, we've also made it so casual. Like, how many times have we been told, well, it's just like a period?
Right.
And if you have really heavy periods,
And
how are you going to know what hemorrhage, and
and
it
we
just
see,
spirals.
and if you see ER visit, oh, well, okay. Women don't want to go to the ER after an abortion. The reason they're having an abortion at home is they don't have to go to a hospital or a clinic or talk to anyone. So the last thing they want to do is check themselves into an emergency room. If they're visiting the emergency room, it's bad.
Well, and also abortion pill providers, which again, like, this is in the most ideal scenario possible.
Mm-hmm.
When you're buying abortion pills online, these abortion pill providers are telling women not to go to the ER,
Right.
or not to be honest about why they're in the ER.
Yes.
So
they wouldn't show up on insurance this way anyway.
These numbers are astronomical, and this is in like an incredibly controlled, ideal situation kind of circumstance.
Right.
I can't even begin to fathom, if you were to look at it as like a big picture, including all of the different things that were excluded from the study, what it would look like. Important to note that this study is limited to health insurance claims. So these are
insured women.
These are insured women. This is not women buying abortion pills off the internet.
Right. Or women who have maybe poor health because they're illegal and they don't have insurance, or they're extremely
cash
impoverished.
Only. Like, the study very specifically states it is exclusively insured women.
Right. And teenagers, women who are here illegally, women who are impoverished, women who are in domestic violence situations are going to use cash.
Yeah.
Because they don't want their boyfriend, their parents. They don't have insurance, like whatever. They're using cash to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So what was excluded? Because I want to know. 72% of emergency room encounters within 45 days of abortion were excluded from the analysis. These 98,483 ER visits involved diagnoses not clearly related to the chemical abortion or not medically serious. So this includes, but is not limited to, shortness of breath, nausea with vomiting. How many of our girls complain about nausea and vomiting? Yeah. Like horrifying nausea and vomiting. Like, you can't control it. Not like, oh, my stomach kind of hurts, I might have the flu. Like, I'm shaking, I'm out of control, I'm vomiting aggressively.
Yeah.
Unspecified lower abdominal pain.
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19 exposure, that's not primarily. Nicotine dependence, okay. Asthma, okay. Anxiety disorder.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say that there's, for all of these serious adverse events that are listed, they're not including any sort of mental health crisis.
Well, they are.
Hold
on. They are.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
in
going.
The study?
Mm-hmm. The study only included severe grade 3 and life-threatening grade 4 events per the National Institute of Health's common terminology criteria for adverse events. Okay, so they're using like national criteria.
Yeah, they provide the medical codes that they're using.
We excluded non-life-threatening mental health codes. So they did include homicidal and suicidal ideation. But if you go in with and you get paying a mental health code after your abortion and you're not either homicidal or suicidal, they didn't include it.
Right. So that's what I was saying, is that they, like, all of these serious adverse events, they're only including the worst of the worst mental health. They're not including any sort of PTSD, anxiety type things. You're looking at suicide.
Right. Yeah, these are women who are going to be committed.
Right.
Yeah. Only codes related to hemorrhage or serious bleeding, according to the FDA definition, were included. Typical expected bleeding as a known and expected side effect is not captured in our serious adverse effects. Why does this matter? As a woman who's been through a miscarriage and other life, postpartum kind of things, you can have bleeding that is absolutely terrifying, and the hospital will tell you it's normal. Like, you 100% think you are going to die. and the hospital, you go to the hospital, because I've done this twice, and they're like, oh no, it's not as bad as you think it is. I mean, like, not to be graphic, but like soaking a pad every 2 hours for days. And they're like,
It's normal.
yeah, it's not a hemorrhage.
Yeah.
So when they say hemorrhage, it's bad.
Right.
Like, it's like bad, bad, bad. So this rigorous approach, excluding 72% of ER visits, represents a floor for serious adverse events, and it is cautious to avoid artificially inflating serious adverse events. So the takeaway is that not only is this data extremely trustworthy, it's probably low.
They lowballed it for sure.
Yeah, they 100% lowballed
just all of the things that they excluded in trying to be cautious. This is a lowball study,
which I think they needed to do, or they wouldn't have been taken seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes, I mean, and part of me is like, no, I want to really see the numbers, but I think that they did what they needed to do in order to have a serious study, and not being told like, oh, well, you added this and this and you shouldn't have.
Right.
So what are their recommendations? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to look at, right? Okay, so this is bad. 11% of women having an abortion under ideal circumstances are having an adverse health event. How do we fix that? Like, how do we make this not happen anymore? So what they are recommending, it says the FDA should reinstate the original patient safety protocols that were required when mifepristone was first approved. Doing so will likely reduce the harms to women and permit better monitoring to determine whether the drug should remain on the market. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's too late. Pandora's box has already been opened.
I would agree. I think it's unrealistic that we would go back to what it was.
I mean, I think we should try.
Sure. But also, I think it's important to note that during some of this study, so this was done they're looking at data from 2017 to 2023. In 2017, there were protocols in place for mifepristone. So in 2020, the FDA temporarily, theoretically, removed some of these safety protocols for accessing mifepristone because of the pandemic. So it used to be you had to go to a physical location to receive the prescription. You had to kind of go through XYZ appointments before they would prescribe it to you. And that was done away with during the pandemic because people weren't going, they're trying to reduce the amount of people in physical locations.
Right.
They made this a permanent thing in 2023. I think it's 2023 that they permanently, removed that requirement. So some of this data is from when they had, so going back to the FDA restrictions is not going to fix it because this was happening while those restrictions were in place. This is not about, at the end of the day, it's the procedure itself that is a problem. It is not the lack of oversight we have now is contributing to the problem, for sure.
Horrifying, yeah.
But the reality is that mifepristone itself, paired with misoprostol, is the problem.
Yes,
you cannot regulate that.
You can't. It shouldn't be on the market.
Yeah.
And I realize that, you're still going to be able to get it illegally, but we don't make things legal. Wow, this feels like an old conversation. We don't make things legal just to make them safe. So something else that has happened over the last 25 years. Wow, 2000 was 25 years ago.
Oh.
I need a moment.
Okay.
That's why my back hurts.
I was like, oh.
Okay, so 2000 was 25 years ago, which is upsetting, but
it's fine.
When the Clinton administration, or under Clinton, this was initially approved, it was 7 weeks pregnant. You could use it if you were 7 weeks pregnant. You had to have it prescribed by a physician. It had to be dispensed in the office. It had to be taken in the office. There was a required in-office follow-up, which I'm sure some people didn't go to, but it was still there.
Yeah.
And you required to report adverse events.
Right.
And I remember doing my training in 2008, and it was 49 days LMP. Like, it was so early that they did it by days. Like, they didn't just say 7 weeks, it was 49 days.
Yeah.
So now, fast forward 16 years to 2016, the REMS change. Obama lifts the requirements that it goes from 7 weeks to 10 weeks, which is a pretty significant jump, especially at that gestational age. It's no longer needs to be prescribed by a physician. It does still need to be dispensed in office, but it no longer needs to be taken in the office. It no longer needs to have an in-office follow-up, and it no longer needs to have adverse events reported. Fast forward again to 2023, it's still 10 weeks, and now you don't even have to have it prescribed by a physician. Or I'm sorry,
No,
it doesn't need to be dispensed in the office. So
Yeah.
no physician, no office, no follow-up, no reporting, nothing. And if they don't want you to report adverse events, it's because they don't want you to find out about them.
Right. So, yeah, we need to have more steps in place in order to obtain mifepristone, but it's not going to fix what is happening because
this is
it's
a
dangerous.
disaster 25 years in the making.
Yeah.
And when you and I were carrying on in 2023 about the REMS, and everyone's looking at us like we're crazy. Now, 2 years later, where are we? We're in a wild west where everything goes and everyone's using abortion pills and everyone thinks they're amazing.
Yeah. So I'm glad that this study was done. I think
we need to make sure women know.
Well, that's the thing is I was like, you and I both know that women aren't finding out because it's advertising. This is now an advertising thing. And we've talked before about how we're up against just monstrosities of organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Organizations
that know better.
Organizations that know better. You cannot convince me that any of the abortion pill providers don't know this information.
The World Health Organization knows this.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me the World Health Organization had no idea that at-home abortions were dangerous.
No, these are smart people that we're dealing with. Right? Like, people who work for the World Health Organization are smart. They also have research degrees.
Right.
So, like, you can't tell me that they don't have access to this information, that they haven't looked at it, that they have no idea.
And so they're selling okay, so there's a couple, and we were actually at an event last week.
Wow. Yeah, almost 2 weeks
ago. Why
does
it feel like longer than that?
It's been a long week. So much happened.
And we were talking about the why. And there's really 3 reasons.
Why are people selling abortion pills?
Right. Why are people selling, peddling, pushing abortion pills, whatever? Yeah. The first one is money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Billion-dollar industry.
Money. Billions of dollars go into this. It makes and breaks political campaigns. The money is very much circular. So the people who make the laws get the money from the places that benefit from the abortions.
Yep.
Okay. The second is population control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying like society, not me personally. We don't want poor people of color having babies. And so they push abortions on women in those categories. And that's where we see abortion clinics, but it's also where we see advertising for abortions.
Right. And this goes all the way back. I mean, it goes way back, but you can look at the founding of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, very openly racist. Mm-hmm. Like, this was not like some sort of secret hidden thing. No. Like, she was very proudly like, oh yeah, like we want to abort Black babies.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it was very popular to be a eugenicist in her day and age, and so there was no need to hide it.
Right.
It was her intellectual superiority.
And the abortions that we fund overseas as the United States also is directly tied to population control.
So essentially,
and we've done an episode about organizations that have openly admitted that it's a form of population control.
And it's always geared against Black and brown people.
Yep.
People in poverty.
Yep.
And then the third reason, and this is the one that I think is the hardest for people to get their head and their hands around, is the spiritual piece. And this is where I always end up because it doesn't make sense. Abortion hurts women. Abortion hurts families. Abortion hurts communities. It is so much easier to help a woman have a baby than to help a woman have an abortion in the long run.
Oh, yeah.
But we keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that makes sense is that we have an enemy whose goal is to steal and kill and destroy. And how much more can you steal, kill, and destroy than to steal and kill and destroy the life of an unborn child and the connection that mother has with her child and the father has with his child and the community has with that child.
Yeah.
And that's what is so, that's why the burden is so heavy, because abortion is so bad. And I tell people all the time, I mean, not all the time, but some of the time, like, I got into pro-life work for babies. Mm-hmm. I saw how bad abortion was for babies, and I wanted to help babies, and I wanted to save babies, and that was important to me, and it still is. But I stay for women.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would be easy to get another job and make more money and have less stress, but women deserve better than abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, our society is offering them abortion on a grotesque scale. and telling them that it will solve all their problems and it will empower them and it will make them their best version of themselves. And then when they wake up the next morning and they are absolutely shattered physically and emotionally, no one's there to help them except us.
Yeah. Yeah. So the at-home abortion issue continues to be, I think, one of the greatest human rights problems of our time.
100%.
Um,
and what this study doesn't address, and maybe a study could never address it, is what about all the women who are aborting outside of these ideal circumstances?
Right. And that's what I was thinking, is like, this is a very controlled study. Again, kudos to the Ethic and Public Policy Center. It's a very controlled study. If they were to take this and look at women who are using mifepristone beyond 10 weeks, which is, like, quite frankly, it's rather rare for me to have someone on the chat line who's under 10 weeks.
They're almost all
They're
like
almost all
16 plus
16
weeks.
plus weeks. It would be so much worse.
I would guesstimate that of women who go through with a home abortion in their second or third trimester, the adverse event rate would skyrocket to 50%.
At least.
At least.
Yeah. Like, it's just awful.
And websites that sell women these pills are saying, if you are further along in your pregnancy, just take more pills. There is no acknowledgement of the risks, of the dangers. This is easy. This is safe. This is natural. This is like getting your period. A hemorrhage is not like getting your period. Sepsis is not like getting your period.
No. And I think, because one of the big things that I come across, especially in kind of like this influencer, first of all, abortion influencers, wild. Like, you've got people who are like vlogging their abortion experience.
Ew.
Like, wild. But it's all done for like this look at, like, it's so easy and blah, 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 blah.
That's disgusting.
One of the things that's regularly brought up is that abortion is safer than taking Tylenol. Like, you've heard it too, right? It's safer than taking Tylenol, and they're like looking at the adverse events for Tylenol compared to mifepristone, and they're like, see, like,
that's the dumbest thing.
I've
heard it so many times.
It's really dumb. It's
like, I took a Tylenol this morning and I am not having a hemorrhage. I'm not having sepsis. I'm also not having a migraine, so it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, right. You're like, it did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the lies that girls are being told, and then when not if, when these things happen, they are frankly shocked.
Oh yeah,
because they're like, I was told it was like a period, and they're freaking out because they're bleeding, and I'm guaranteeing you that most of the girls who go to the ER, 72% maybe, would not even be considered an adverse event.
Right.
Because the ER is like, no, this is an expected level of bleeding. So why is it when you talk to the abortion pill provider, I'm not even going to call them a clinic, they're like, oh, it's like a period, and then you get to the ER thinking that you're bleeding to death, and the ER is like, no, this is normal. So they know.
Yeah, they know. But hopefully this study will at least highlight that Tylenol does not have a 10%, 11% adverse event score.
It seems like it does not. And
like, it doesn't.
And I don't want to sound fatalistic. I did say, like, it's out of the box. It's too late. And that's incorrect. It is not too late. We can change our culture. We can help women understand that this is harmful. This is dangerous. We can see this consigned, as Mike Pence would say, to the ash heap of history. We don't see coat hanger abortions anymore.
No.
Because women know that they are dangerous and they're difficult and they're painful and they're ugly. And so we need to treat this like the coat hanger that it is. And make sure that women understand that it is not a good idea. And it certainly is not safe and natural and safer than taking a Tylenol.
Yeah. And so this is the battle that we're up against. And it's a massive, like, I'm so tired.
I need a nap.
Like, yeah. And I'm like, it's been a long day. And there's been a lot going on, including a new pope.
And you have to be on chat in 20 minutes.
I do have to be on chat in 20 minutes. But, I mean, it's just a massive battle, and there's not enough people fighting on our end.
No.
And we've regularly talked about the fact that we continue to be the only pro-life website dedicated to the at-home abortion issue.
And we're not funded enough now, not even close.
And we don't have the funding to make it what it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because we are competing against giant organizations, Doctors Without Borders, Planned Parenthood.
And, this, when did this study release?
Oh,
April 28th?
yeah, it came out last week.
This should have been up on our website within a day or two, and I can tell you it's not up yet because both Mikayla and I are stretched beyond imagination, and it will probably not get up this week.
No,
even though it needs
tearing
to.
up thinking about the fact that it's one more thing I have to do.
And you might be thinking, but it's important. It is important.
It is important.
And so are the other hundreds of things we have to do to keep this organization running and to keep it functioning. And so we need you. Like, we need your help. We need your volunteer time. We need funds. We need prayer support. We need all of it. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, that is awful, you're correct. It is. So let's do something about it. So you can donate at promiseoflifenetwork.org/donate. Donation of any size would make a difference, but I could really use $20,000 right now to get the website back to where it was at the end of last year.
Yeah.
So that would be great. If you would like to learn more about our specific needs, you can email podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org. I'll set up a meeting with you. I'll go over our finances with you, and I'll explain exactly what it's going to take to do what we need to do because it needs to be done.
Yeah. This study just highlights 22 times I'm at a loss for words. I'm also getting upset. 22 times as more dangerous than the FDA sits around and talks about it being. Yep. 22 times.
All of those organizations who are happy to sell these women pills at $30, $40, $50 to $500 a pop, they know. They know that it is way worse than whatever percent, 0.5%, and they're selling them anyway. And we have to stop it. And we're going to stop it. But we need your help to do it.
Yeah.
So that's it.
What's the Jesus moment in all of this?
Well, I talked about the enemy killing and stealing and destroying a little bit. The important thing to remember is that even when hope seems lost and Pandora's box is open and destruction is flooding the world, that Christ has overcome.
Yeah.
And the Lord tells us not only that he has overcome, but he says, be of good cheer. I have overcome the world, which is like the King James version.
Yeah.
But it's also like it's ingrained. It's engraved on my memory because I learned it as a kid. And it's what I focus on whenever I'm feeling like overwhelmed and depressed and like there's nothing we can do. It's too much. It's too hard. It's too heavy. And Jesus says, be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And so we are called to do this work and we're called to do it well. And I believe that you, our listener, are called to do it with us. But we know we win in the end. And so my goal today, we were actually talking about this at our prayer meeting this morning, is to bring my 5 loaves and 2 fishes to Jesus and watch him feed the 5,000. Because I can't feed the 5,000. I can't minister to the 5,000. I can't fill the 5,000. But I can bring my tiny little offering to the Lord and he can multiply it beyond my wildest imaginations. And that's what I'm trusting in.
Yeah.
That's my Jesus moment.
Oh, that's a good one.
Thank you. So we will see you next week. Congratulations to the new Pope. Congratulations, Villanova. I'm sure your enrollment is going to go up now.
Yeah.
And I hope you get a discount on a public speaking engagement from Pope Leo the 14th.
Can you imagine going to commencement and your commencement speaker is the Pope?
That'd be amazing. All right. Have a good day. Donate, please. We need you.
Please.
And let's save some lives. All right. See you next week.